Hey guys, tonight we begin with the freezing, fatal, and mercilessly long world of winter in medieval Europe. One bad harvest means your family starves by February. Running out of firewood doesn't mean you are uncomfortable, it means you are dead. Winter doesn't just arrive, it lays siege to your life for 5 solid months. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from and what time it is for you. It is always fascinating to see who is joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Welcome to the year 1285, late October. You are a peasant in rural England, and right now you are standing at the edge of the worst part of the medieval year. Harvest is over. The days are getting shorter, the temperature is dropping, and everyone in the village knows what is coming. Winter, not the cozy, hot chocolate and sweater kind of winter. The kind that kills people, lots of people, every single year. Winter is the medieval boss fight, and everyone's severely underleveled. You don't have central heating. You don't have insulated walls. You don't have a grocery store you can walk to when food runs low. What you have is a mud hut, a pile of firewood that is probably not enough, some grain that might last until spring if you ration it perfectly, and the knowledge that somewhere between now and April, people you know will die, children will die, old people will die, sick people will die. And if you make one mistake, one miscalculation, one bad decision about resources, you might die too. Let's be clear about something right from the start. Medieval winter isn't a season. It is a survival challenge that lasts 5 months. From November through March, maybe into April, if you are unlucky, you are fighting a daily battle against cold, hunger, darkness, and disease. And unlike modern winters where the worst that happens is your car won't start, medieval winter has actual stakes. You don't lose convenience, you lose your life. The statistics are brutal. Winter mortality rates in medieval villages were roughly double the summer rates. For every 10 people in your village at the start of November, 1 or 2 won't make it to May. The very young die first. Babies and toddlers whose bodies can't regulate temperature. Then the elderly, whose bodies have already been broken by decades of hard labor. Then anyone who is already sick or injured. Winter is the great color. It finds weakness and exploits it mercilessly. But here is the thing that makes medieval winter especially terrifying. It is not quick. Modern disasters are fast. Earthquakes, car crashes, heart attacks. Medieval winter is slow. It is a grinding, months-long process of progressive deterioration. You start November cold and hungry. By December you are colder and hungrier. By January you are dangerously cold and starving. By February you are hypothermic and malnourished to the point where your body is consuming itself. By March, if you've made it that far, you are a skeleton wrapped in skin, barely alive, desperately waiting for spring. And some people just don't make it. They go to sleep one night in late February and don't wake up. Their bodies simply gave up. Right now, it is late October. You can feel it in the air. The bite, the warning. Winter is announcing its arrival. The days are noticeably shorter. The sun rises later and sets earlier, and the light it provides is weak and grey. The temperature is dropping fast. Morning frost has started appearing on the ground. The leaves have fallen from the trees, and the landscape looks dead. Brown, skeletal. Foreboding. This is the calm before the storm. The brief window where you can still prepare, where you can still work outside without your hands going numb, where you can still gather the resources that will determine whether you live or die. Your family has been preparing for winter since September. Everyone has. The entire village has been in constant motion, desperately trying to build up enough supplies to last through the siege, because that is what winter is. A siege. An enemy that surrounds you and cuts off all resources and waits for you to run out of supplies. Except the enemy isn't an army. It is the weather. And you can't surrender, you can't negotiate. You just have to endure. The first priority was firewood. Always firewood. Fire is life in medieval winter. Without fire, you freeze to death. It is that simple. So for the past 2 months, you and your father and brother have been cutting wood. Every day. Dawn to dusk, felling trees, cutting them into logs, splitting the logs, stacking them to dry. Your hands are covered in blisters and calluses. Your back aches constantly. Your arms feel like they might fall off. But you keep cutting, because the alternative is freezing to death. In January, the village has a rough calculation. Each family needs about 4 cords of wood to make it through winter. A cord is a stack of wood, 4 feet high, 4 feet wide, and 8 feet long. 4 of those, that is roughly 128 cubic feet of wood per family. And medieval wood cutting is done entirely by hand. Axes, saws, manual labour, no chainsaws, no power tools. Just you and your father, and your brother, and your axes and the endless forest, and the desperate knowledge that you need to cut more, stack more, prepare more. But here is the problem. 4 cords is the minimum. That assumes a normal winter. If winter is especially cold or especially long, you need more. But you can't cut unlimited wood. You have other work to do. The harvest took priority through September. Now you are doing winter prep, but you are also still working the Lord's fields for corvée labour. You are also repairing your house, preparing food stores, slaughtering animals. There is not enough time. There is never enough time. So you estimate. You gamble. You cut what you think is enough and hope you are right. Because if you are wrong, you'll run out of wood in February, and then you have to choose between freezing to death or burning your furniture, your tools, anything that can burn. And once those are gone, you just freeze. Your family's wood pile is decent. Not great. Decent. It is stacked against the side of your house, covered with some old thatch to keep the rain off. It looks like a lot of wood. It is probably not enough. It never feels like enough. Your father stares at it sometimes, with this look on his face. Calculating, worrying, trying to determine if it'll last. He doesn't know. Nobody knows. You just prepare as best you can and hope. Food storage is the second priority. You need enough food to last from November through April, roughly 6 months. And the food has to be non-perishable, because there is no refrigeration. Everything has to be dried, salted, smoked, or stored in a root cellar. Your family's food stores consist of grain, some preserved vegetables, and if you are lucky, some salted meat from the pig you slaughtered last week. The grain is stored in a wooden chest in the corner of your house. It is mostly barley and oats. The wheat went to the Lord as rent and taxes. You kept the cheap grain. The grain has to last until next harvest, which is August. That is 10 months away. Your family has maybe 200 pounds of grain. Sounds like a lot. It is not. 5 people eating 3 meals a day for 10 months. Do the math. It is tight. Very tight. You'll be rationing by January. By March, you'll be eating portions so small they barely count as meals. By May, you'll be desperately foraging for anything edible. Spring greens, tree bark, things you wouldn't normally consider food. But that is a problem for future. You just has to make it through winter. The vegetables are in the root cellar. Root cellar is a generous term for a hole in the ground lined with straw. It is basically a pit under your house where you store turnips, onions, carrots, and parsnips. The pit keeps them cool enough not to rot immediately, but not frozen. In theory. In practice, half of them will rot by January anyway. The ones at the bottom will get mouldy. The ones at the top will freeze during particularly cold nights. You'll eat around the rotten parts. You'll eat things that are questionable. You'll eat things that make you sick. Because wasting food isn't an option. Every mouldy turnip you throw away is one less meal. And meals are the difference between life and death. The meat situation is particularly dire. Your family had 1 pig. 1. The pig was slaughtered last week. It provided maybe 120 pounds of usable meat. Some of that was eaten fresh. The rest was salted heavily and is now hanging from the ceiling, wrapped in cloth to keep flies off. 120 pounds sounds substantial. It is not. 5 people for 6 months. That is 4 ounces of meat per person per week. Barely anything. Most meals won't have meat. Most meals will be porridge made from grain, with maybe some onions or turnips thrown in for flavour. The meat is for special occasions. Religious feast days. Sundays, maybe. Days when morale is so low that your mother decides a bit of bacon in the porridge is worth it, just to keep everyone's spirits up. The pig was everything. Your family spent all year raising that pig, feeding it scraps, letting it root around outside, keeping it alive so it could be slaughtered in October and provide winter food. Losing the pig before slaughter would have been catastrophic. Fortunately, the pig made it. Not all families were so lucky. Your neighbour's pig died in September from some sickness. His family is facing winter without that crucial protein source. They'll survive, probably. But it'll be harder, hungrier, more desperate. Beyond food and fuel, there is clothing to worry about. Medieval peasants don't have closets full of clothes. You own maybe 2 or 3 pieces of clothing total. a tunic, a pair of breeches if you are male, a dress if you are female, maybe a cloak. That is it. Those clothes have to function in summer and winter. There are no seasonal wardrobes. You don't swap out your summer clothes for winter clothes. You just layer the same clothes you've been wearing all year and hope it is enough. Your winter strategy is simple. Wear everything you own simultaneously. Your tunic is wool. Wool is good for winter because it insulates even when wet. But it is also scratchy and uncomfortable and hasn't been washed in 6 months. You'll wear it every day for the next 5 months. Over the tunic you'll add your cloak. The cloak is heavy wool, meant to block wind. It is also full of holes because it has been repaired dozens of times over the years. You'll wear the cloak day and night. You'll sleep in it. You'll work in it. It'll become part of your body. On your feet you have shoes. They're leather, tied with string, and they're already falling apart. The soles have holes. The leather is cracked. They're not waterproof. When it snows, your feet will be wet and cold constantly. You'll develop chilblains, which are painful inflammations of the small blood vessels in your skin, caused by repeated exposure to cold. Your toes will swell up, turn red, itch like hell, and sometimes crack open and bleed. There is no treatment. You just suffer through it and hope gangrene doesn't set in. If gangrene sets in, you lose the toes. If infection spreads, you lose the foot. If infection continues, you die. All because of wet shoes in winter. You don't have gloves. Gloves are for rich people. Your hands will be exposed to the cold for 5 months. They'll crack and bleed. The skin will split open at the knuckles. Your fingers will go numb regularly. Sometimes you won't be able to feel your hands at all, and you'll have to warm them by the fire slowly, because warming them too fast causes excruciating pain. Your hands will hurt all winter. Every winter for your entire life. This is just part of being a medieval peasant. Permanent hand damage from cold exposure. The house itself is the biggest problem. Your house is not equipped for winter. It is barely equipped for summer. The walls are wattle and daub, wooden frames filled with woven sticks and covered with a mixture of mud, straw and animal dung. This is not insulation. This is barely a windbreak. The walls have gaps. Cold air flows through freely. The door doesn't fit the frame properly. There is a gap at the bottom where wind and snow blow in. The windows are just holes in the walls, covered with wooden shutters that don't close completely. You can close them to keep out some cold, but then you lose all natural light and the house becomes pitch black. The roof is thatched, straw and reeds layered thick to keep rain out. It works reasonably well in summer. In winter, it is a disaster. Snow accumulates on the roof, melts slightly during the day when the sun hits it, then refreezes at night. Ice forms. The weight of ice and snow stresses the thatch. Sometimes roofs collapse. People die. Every winter you hear about some family whose roof caved in during the night. Sometimes they're crushed. Sometimes they just freeze to death because now their house has no roof. And it is January, and good luck surviving that. But even if your roof holds, it leaks. Cold air flows through. The inside of your house in winter is maybe 10 degrees warmer than outside. Maybe, if you are running the fire constantly. Without the fire, inside and outside temperatures are identical. Your house is not a shelter. It is just a roof and some walls that block direct wind. That is it. You are basically camping indoors for 5 months. The floor is dirt, packed dirt, covered with straw rushes. In winter the floor is freezing. The cold radiates up from the ground. Your feet are always cold. You sleep on a platform made of wood, elevated slightly off the ground, but that doesn't help much. Cold air is heavier than warm air. It sinks. The bottom half of the room is always colder. You sleep in the cold zone. You wake up cold. You go to bed cold. You are cold constantly. For months. There is no escape from the cold, except the immediate area around the fire. The fire is everything. The fire is the difference between uncomfortable and dead. It is kept in a pit in the centre of the room. Just a depression in the dirt floor surrounded by stones. The smoke theoretically rises and exits through a hole in the roof. In practice, most of the smoke stays in the room. The air is grey. Your eyes water constantly. You cough. Everyone coughs. All the time. Smoke inhalation is just part of winter life. By spring, everyone's lungs are damaged. The coughing doesn't stop. Some people develop chronic respiratory problems. Some die from lung infections. But the alternative is no fire, which means freezing. so you accept the smoke. The fire runs constantly. Someone has to tend it. If it goes out, restarting it is difficult. You don't have matches. You don't have lighters. You have flint and steel, and starting a fire from scratch in a cold, damp room takes time and effort, and sometimes fails. So the fire never goes out. Someone wakes up every few hours during the night to add wood. Usually your mother. Mothers always get the worst jobs. She sleeps in short intervals, waking up to check the fire, add a log, make sure everyone's still alive. She'll do this every night for 5 months. By spring, she'll be more exhausted than you can imagine. The fire provides heat, but only in a small radius. Maybe 5 feet from the fire, it is warm. 10 feet away, it is cold. 15 feet away, it is freezing. Your house is roughly 20 feet by 15 feet. Most of it is freezing most of the time. The family clusters near the fire. Everyone sits as close as possible, soaking up warmth. You rotate positions. The people closest to the fire get warm, then swap with the people on the outer edge who are freezing. You do this all day, all night, for months. Your entire life in winter is about managing proximity to the fire. The wood consumption is staggering. In deep winter, you are burning through 1 log every 2 hours. That is 12 logs a day. Multiply by 150 days of winter. That is 1,800 logs. Did you cut 1,800 logs? Did you stack 1,800 logs? Is your wood pile big enough? You don't know. You are about to find out. And if the answer is no, if you run out of wood in February, your options are horrifying. Burn furniture, burn tools, burn parts of your house, or freeze. Those are the options. Food becomes an obsession in winter, not in the modern, I am craving pizza way. In the I am genuinely starving and might die way. Your family starts winter with adequate food. By December, portions are smaller. By January, you are hungry all the time. By February, you are starving. Genuinely starving. Your body is consuming itself. You are losing weight rapidly. Your clothes hang loose. Your face becomes gaunt. Your eyes are sunken. You are weak, tired, cold, and still you have to ration. Because running out of food in March is worse than being hungry in February. Breakfast in winter is porridge, always porridge. Made from oats or barley, cooked in water, sometimes with a bit of onion if you are lucky. The porridge is thin, more water than grain, because grain is precious. You eat your small bowl of porridge and you are still hungry. You'll be hungry all day. Hunger becomes your default state. You learn to function while starving. You work while starving. You sleep while starving. You exist in a constant state of nutritional deficit. Your body adapts, sort of. It lowers your metabolism. You move slower. Think slower. You are conserving energy because there is no energy coming in. Lunch is more porridge. Maybe with a piece of hard bread, if bread is available. The bread is rock hard. You have to soak it in the porridge to soften it enough to chew. It tastes like flour and disappointment, but it is calories. You eat it gratefully. Dinner is porridge again, maybe with some turnip. The turnip is soft and slightly rotten because it has been in the root cellar for 2 months. You cut off the obviously bad parts and eat the rest. It tastes terrible. You eat it anyway. On Sundays there might be a tiny piece of salted pork in the porridge, maybe half an ounce. Just enough to add a hint of flavour. That is the highlight of your week. Half an ounce of meat. Children suffer the worst in winter. Their bodies need more calories to grow, but they're getting less food than adults. The hierarchy is clear. Father eats first and most because he does the hardest work. Then sons old enough to work. Then everyone else. Children and women get whatever's left, which often isn't much. By February, children are visibly malnourished. Their bellies are swollen from malnutrition. Their arms and legs are thin. They cry from hunger. Your mother tries to soothe them. She gives them extra porridge from her own portion. She is starving herself, so her children can eat slightly more. It is not enough. It is never enough. Some children don't make it. They die in their sleep. Their bodies just give up. One morning, a child doesn't wake up. The family grieves briefly. Then life continues, because grieving requires energy, and energy is in short supply. The elderly die too. Your grandmother is 70, which is ancient by medieval standards. She has lived through 50 winters. This one might be her last. She is weak, frail. She doesn't eat much because she knows food is limited. She is essentially waiting to die, not dramatically, just practically. She is old. She has lived a full life, and she knows winter takes the weed. She spends her days sitting by the fire, conserving energy, staying warm. She tells stories sometimes. Memories of her youth, other winters, other hardships. She has seen this cycle dozens of times. She knows how it ends. By January, people start dying. It happens every year. You wake up one morning, and someone mentions that Edmund down the road died last night. Old Edmund, he was 60. Not surprising. He'd been coughing for weeks. The cold settled in his lungs. Pneumonia probably, though nobody calls it that. They just say he had the cough, and now he is dead. His family will bury him when the ground thaws. Right now, the ground is frozen solid. You can't dig graves in winter, so bodies are stored, wrapped in cloth, placed in a shed or barn, left to freeze. They'll be buried in April. This is normal. This is what happens every winter. Death is so common. It is barely remarked upon. February is the worst month, the absolute worst. You are 4 months into winter. 3 months of cold and hunger have worn you down. You are exhausted. Your body is failing. The food stores are dangerously low. The firewood pile is shrinking fast. Everyone in the village is in the same state. Thin, weak, desperate, the air smells like death. Literally. Between the smoke, the unwashed bodies, the rotting food, and the general decay, the village smells like a graveyard. And you just have to endure, because giving up means dying, and you are not ready to die yet. So you endure. The darkness is its own torture. In February, the sun rises around 8 in the morning and sets by 4 in the afternoon. That is 8 hours of weak, grey daylight. 16 hours of darkness. You spend most of your life in darkness. The fire provides some light, but firelight is dim and flickering. You can't read by firelight. Not that you can read anyway. You can't do detailed work, you just sit and wait and exist in the dark for hours. For months, the darkness is oppressive. It messes with your mind. You become depressed. Everyone becomes depressed. Seasonal affective disorder on a massive scale. But there is no treatment, no therapy. You just suffer through it and hope spring comes soon. Sleep is the only escape. You sleep a lot in winter. Not because you are tired, though you are, but because sleeping means not being awake, not feeling hungry, not feeling cold, not feeling the crushing boredom and despair of winter. You go to bed early. You sleep late. You nap during the day. Sleep is the closest thing to peace you'll experience for 5 months. But sleep in winter is terrible. You are cold, always cold. You sleep in all your clothes, under a thin blanket, pressed against your siblings for warmth. You wake up multiple times during the night. Sometimes because you are too cold to sleep. Sometimes because you need to pee. Getting out of bed to pee in winter is an act of will. The room is freezing. The floor is freezing. You stumble to the chamber pot in the corner, do your business, and rush back to bed. The whole experience takes maybe 2 minutes, but feels like an eternity of cold. Some nights you can't get warm no matter what. Your body is shivering. Your teeth are chattering. You are curled into a ball, trying to conserve heat. You don't sleep. You just lie there, cold and miserable, waiting for morning. Morning brings no relief. It is still cold. It is still dark. It is still winter. You get up because you have to. Not because you want to. Never because you want to. You get up, wrap yourself in your cloak, and move close to the fire. This is your life. Every day, for months. Occasionally, there is work to do in winter. Not much. You can't farm. The ground is frozen. You can't do outdoor labour. It is too cold. But there are indoor tasks. Repairing tools. Making rope. Carving wood. Fixing things that broke during the year. This work is done slowly. You are conserving energy. Moving fast burns calories you don't have. So everything happens in slow motion. Even thinking feels slow. Your brain is running on minimal power. You are in survival mode. The village is quiet in winter. Nobody socializes. Nobody visits neighbors. It is too cold to leave your house unless absolutely necessary. You see other people at church on Sundays, and that is it. Everyone looks the same. Thin, pale, exhausted. No one smiles. No one has energy for smiling. You exchange nods. Brief conversations about who died recently. Then everyone returns to their houses. And the isolation continues. Church in winter is a special kind of torture. The church is stone, which means it is even colder than your house. You are required to attend Mass every Sunday. So you walk through snow and ice to the church. Stand in the freezing building for an hour while the priest speaks Latin you don't understand, and then walk home. The only positive is that the church attendance confirms you are still alive. If someone stops showing up to church, it usually means they died. The priest keeps a mental tally. He knows who is missing. He'll visit the family eventually. Check if they need last rites. Take confession from the dying. It is part of the job. Disease spreads faster in winter. Everyone's cooped up inside, sharing air, sharing germs. If one person gets sick, the whole family gets sick. Respiratory infections are common. The endless coughing, the wheezing, the lung pain. Some people recover, some people don't. If you develop a high fever in January, your chances aren't great. There is no medicine, no antibiotics, no way to bring down a fever except waiting. If the fever breaks, you survive. If it doesn't, you die. It is that simple. Frostbite is another constant threat. Your extremities, fingers, toes, nose, ears are vulnerable. If they get cold enough for long enough, the tissue dies. It turns black. It smells like rot. If you are lucky, it stays localized. You lose a toe. You lose a finger. Painful but survivable. If you are unlucky, infection sets in. Then you are looking at amputation. Medieval amputation means a blacksmith heats up a blade. You bite down on a piece of leather, and they cut off your hand or foot while you scream. No anesthesia, just pain. If you survive the amputation and the subsequent infection doesn't kill you, you are now disabled in a world that doesn't accommodate disability. You can't work as hard. Your family's output decreases. Your survival chances decrease. All because your feet got cold. But the absolute worst thing about medieval winter is the knowledge that it will happen again. Next year, and the year after, and the year after that, for your entire life. This isn't a one-time crisis. It is a recurring nightmare. Every autumn you'll prepare. Every winter you'll suffer. Every spring you'll barely survive. And then you'll do it all again. There is no escape, no moving to a warmer climate. You are stuck in this village, in this life, and winter is part of the package. You don't get to opt out. March arrives, and you are still alive. Barely, you've lost weight. Everyone has. You are weak, malnourished, exhausted. But you are alive. The days are getting slightly longer. The temperature is still brutal, but there are hints that it might, maybe eventually warm up. The snow is still on the ground. The fields are still frozen. But there is a feeling in the air, a sense that the worst might be over. You are not celebrating yet. People die in March too. Your grandmother, in fact, died last week, quietly, in her sleep. Her body just gave up. You are sad, but not surprised. She was old. Winter takes the old. Her body is in the shed, waiting for burial. April comes. The snow melts. The ground thaws, slowly. You can see patches of brown earth. The temperature is above freezing during the day, though it still drops below freezing at night. The sun is out more. The daylight lasts longer. You feel something you haven't felt in months. Hope. Faint, cautious hope that you might actually make it. But the food situation is dire. You are almost out of grain. The last of the salted meat was eaten in March. The root cellar is empty except for a few mouldy turnips. You are foraging now, looking for anything edible. Early spring greens, dandelion leaves, tree bark, things that would have seemed inedible in October. Now they're food. You are so hungry that anything plant-based is appealing. Your mother makes soup from grass and roots. It tastes like nothing, but it is filling. Sort of it tricks your stomach into thinking you are eating. You are not really eating, you are just surviving. By late April, the village has lost about 15% of its population. Infants, elderly, a few unlucky adults who got sick or injured. They're buried now. The ground is soft enough to dig. The priest says some words in Latin. Everyone nods solemnly. And life continues, because dwelling on death doesn't help. You are still alive. You made it, barely. But you made it. May arrives. Spring. Real spring. The temperature is mild. The sun is warm. Plants are growing. You see green for the first time in months. Green grass. Green leaves. The world looks alive again. You feel alive again, sort of. Your body is still wrecked from winter. Your teeth are loose from malnutrition. Your joints ache. You've aged years in a single winter. But you are alive. The first task of spring is planting. You are weak, exhausted, starving. But the fields need to be ploughed and planted. If you don't plant now, there won't be food next winter. And the thought of next winter, while you are still recovering from this winter, is almost too much to bear. But you do it anyway. You pick up the plough. You walk behind it. You turn the soil. You plant seeds. You work until your body screams. Because the alternative is starvation next February. So you work. Everyone works. The village comes alive with activity. Exhausted, half-dead activity. But activity, nonetheless. The spring hunger is different from winter hunger. In winter, you are hungry because food is rationed. In spring, you are hungry because food is gone. The stores are empty. The harvest is months away. This is the hungry gap. The period between the end of winter stores and the arrival of summer food. May and June are brutal. You are foraging constantly. Wild herbs, tree shoots, anything. You are losing more weight. You are weak enough that climbing a hill leaves you breathless. But summer is coming. Food is coming. You just have to hold on. June brings the first real food. Strawberries, wild and tiny and barely sweet. But they're fresh fruit. Fresh anything. You eat them by the handful. You stuff your face. Your body is desperate for nutrients, for vitamins, for anything fresh. The strawberries help. A little. Other summer foods start appearing. Early vegetables from kitchen gardens. Lettuce. Peas. Actual food. Real food. You eat it all. You can't eat enough. Your body is trying to recover from 6 months of starvation. It'll take all summer. By August, the harvest begins again. The cycle repeats. You harvest grain. You process it. You store it. You prepare for next winter, because winter is always coming. It is always out there, waiting. You have 3 months of decent weather, and then it is back to cold and hunger and darkness and death. This is life. This is what it means to be a medieval peasant. An endless cycle of suffering, punctuated by brief periods of less suffering, all building toward the inevitable crisis of winter that you may or may not survive. And the worst part, you know this. You are aware that this is your entire life. Work, suffer, survive, repeat. There is no vacation, no retirement, no escape. You are trapped in this cycle until you die, which, given the life expectancy, will probably be in your 30s or 40s. You'll live through maybe 20 winters. Each one will be worse than the last because your body is accumulating damage. Each winter takes more from you. Eventually, one winter will take everything. But right now, in the middle of this particular winter, February 1286, you are still alive. You are cold, hungry, and miserable. But alive. You are sitting by the fire, wrapped in your cloak, eating a bowl of thin porridge. Your mother is mending clothes by firelight. Your father is staring into the flame. Your siblings are huddled together for warmth. Your grandmother's spot by the fire is empty. She is gone. But everyone else is here. Still fighting, still surviving. Outside, the wind howls. Snow is falling again. The woodpile is shrinking. The grain chest is half empty. But you made it this far. You'll probably make it to spring. Probably. And then you'll do it all again next year, and the year after, and the year after. Until you can't anymore. Until winter wins. Because winter always wins eventually. It is just a matter of when. Welcome to medieval winter, where survival isn't guaranteed, where comfort doesn't exist, where every day is a battle against cold, hunger, and despair, where people die regularly and death is so common it barely registers, where the 5 months from November to March are a gauntlet that kills the weak and barely spares the strong. This is what winter meant for medieval peasants. Not skiing and hot cocoa. Just pure, unrelenting, grinding survival. And if you think your winter is hard, remember this. You have central heating, insulated walls, and a grocery store. They had a pile of wood, a bag of grain, and hope. And sometimes, hope wasn't enough. Let's talk about a specific day in winter. Let's talk about the 15th of January, 1286. The absolute dead of winter. You wake up, if you can call it waking up, around 6 in the morning. It is completely dark. The sun won't rise for another 2 hours. You can't see anything. The fire has burned low during the night. There is just a faint glow of embers. The room is freezing, actually freezing. The temperature inside is maybe 20 degrees Fahrenheit, -7 Celsius. Your breath comes out in clouds. The moisture in your breath freezes in the air. You are lying on a wooden platform covered with straw and a thin blanket. You are wearing every piece of clothing you own. You are pressed against your brother for warmth. Despite all this, you are cold. Bone-deep cold, the kind of cold that makes your body hurt. Your joints ache. Your muscles are stiff. Moving requires conscious effort. You don't want to move. Moving means leaving the small pocket of warmth you've created under the blanket, but you have to move. Nature calls. You sit up slowly. The cold air hits your face like a slap. You can feel the temperature difference immediately. Under the blanket was maybe 40 degrees. The air is 20 degrees. That 20-degree difference feels like stepping into a freezer. Your body starts shivering immediately, uncontrollable shivering. Your teeth chatter. You wrap your cloak tighter around yourself. You stand up. Your feet hit the dirt floor. The floor is frozen solid. It feels like standing on ice. The sensation shoots up through your feet into your legs. You hop from foot to foot, trying to minimize contact. You need to get to the fire. You need warmth. Now, you shuffle toward the faint glow of embers. Your father is already there. He has been up for 30 minutes, slowly bringing the fire back to life. He has added some kindling. Small twigs, bits of bark. He is blowing on the embers, trying to coax flame. It is not working well. The wood is cold. The air is cold. Everything is fighting the fire. But finally, a small flame appears. Your father adds a small log. The flame grows. Not much, but enough to provide a little heat. You sit as close to the fire as possible without actually touching it. The heat on your face is glorious. For the first time in 8 hours, you feel something other than cold. But it is localized. Your face is warm. Your hands, held near the flames, are warming up. The rest of you is still freezing. You are wearing layers, but they're not enough. Medieval wool is thick, but not that thick. The cold penetrates everything. Your mother is up now. She is moving slowly. Everyone moves slowly in winter. Fast movement burns calories you don't have. She is wrapped in 2 blankets. Her face is pale. Gaunt. She looks older than her 38 years. She looks 60. This is what winter does. It ages you. It wears you down. Every winter takes years off your life. By the time you are 40, if you live that long, you'll look ancient. She starts preparing breakfast. Breakfast is the same thing it has been for 2 months. Porridge. She pours water from a clay jug into an iron pot. The water is cold, nearly freezing. She adds a handful of oats. Just a handful, barely enough for 1 person. But it has to feed 5. She hangs the pot over the fire. Now you wait, waiting for the water to heat. Waiting for the oats to cook. Waiting for something warm to eat. While you wait, you realize you still need to pee. You've been holding it, but you can't anymore. Your options are the chamber pot, which is in the corner and is already full and disgusting, or going outside. You choose outside. Anything is better than adding to the chamber pot situation, which has become a biological hazard. You steel yourself. You stand up. You walk to the door. You lift the wooden bar that keeps the door closed. You pull the door open, and winter punches you in the face. The cold outside is different from the cold inside. Inside is cold, outside is violent. The wind is blowing. Not hard. Just enough to cut through every layer you are wearing and find your skin. The wind chill makes the 20-degree temperature feel like 0. Your eyes immediately start watering. Tears form and freeze on your cheeks. Your nose starts running. The moisture freezes before it can drip. You step outside. The ground is covered with snow, about 6 inches. Fresh snow from last night. The snow reflects what little pre-dawn light exists, giving everything a grey glow. You can see shapes, your woodpile, the outline of other houses, the bare trees. But no details, just shapes in the grey. You walk about 10 feet from the door, far enough that you are not pissing right next to your house, close enough that you are not in danger of getting lost in the dark. Yes, getting lost is a real risk. In a blizzard, people have walked 20 feet from their door and never found their way back. They froze to death 10 yards from safety, so you stay close. You do your business quickly. The cold makes it difficult. Everything is numb. Your hands are already losing feeling. Your fingers won't respond properly. You finish, adjust your clothes, and rush back inside. The whole experience took maybe 90 seconds. It felt like an hour. You are shaking. Your teeth are chattering. Your hands are white. You go straight to the fire and shove your hands as close to the flames as you can stand. The pain as feeling returns is intense. Sharp, stabbing pain. But it is better than frostbite. The porridge is ready. Your mother pours it into wooden bowls. 5 bowls. The portions are small, very small, maybe a cup of thin porridge per person. It is more water than oats. You can see through it. But it is hot. Hot is more valuable than filling. You wrap your hands around the bowl, absorbing the warmth. Then you eat. You eat slowly, trying to make it last. The porridge tastes like nothing. Grain and water, no salt, no honey, no flavour, just sustenance. You finish in about 2 minutes. You are still hungry. You are always hungry. Your stomach growls, demanding more. There is no more. The meal is over. You've consumed maybe 200 calories. An adult male needs about 2,500 calories a day. You are getting maybe 1,000. Maybe your body is running on a deficit. It is burning stored fat, burning muscle, consuming itself to stay alive. You are losing weight. Everyone's losing weight. By March, you'll look skeletal. After breakfast, there is work to do. Not much. Winter limits what you can do. You can't farm. The ground is frozen solid. You can't do outdoor labor. It is too cold. But there are always indoor tasks. Today, your job is to repair tools. The wooden handle on the family's axe is loose. If it breaks, you can't cut firewood. If you can't cut firewood, you freeze. So you fix it. Now, you sit by the fire with the axe. You have some cordage, thin rope, made from twisted plant fibers. You wrap the cordage around the handle where it meets the axe head, binding them tighter together. Your fingers are clumsy from the cold. The cordage is stiff, but you work slowly, carefully. This axe is life. You can't afford to mess this up. While you work, your brother is working on something else. He is braiding rope from hemp fibers. Rope is always needed for tying things, for affairs, for 1,000 small uses. The work is tedious, mind-numbing. But it passes the time, and passing time is a legitimate goal in winter. The faster time passes, the sooner spring arrives. So you find ways to fill the hours. Work, sleep, stare at the fire. Anything to make the days go by. Your mother is spinning wool. She has a spindle, a stick with a weight on it, and a mass of raw wool. She is pulling fibers from the wool and twisting them into thread. The thread will eventually become cloth. The cloth will eventually become clothing or blankets. This is women's work. Endless, tedious women's work. Spinning, weaving, sewing, mending. Always making cloth. Always repairing cloth. Because cloth is precious. You can't just buy new clothes when yours wear out. You make clothes. By hand, it takes hundreds of hours. So clothes are repaired until they're more patch than original fabric. And only when they're completely unwearable do you make new ones. Your father is doing nothing. He is sitting by the fire, staring into the flames. This isn't laziness, this is conservation. He is conserving energy. Moving burns calories. Thinking burns calories. So when there is no urgent work, you just sit. You exist. You wait for the day to pass. This is normal. Medieval winter involves a lot of sitting and waiting. Waiting for spring. Waiting for the next meal. Waiting for life to resume. Around midday, the sun finally makes an appearance. Not really. The clouds are too thick. But the grey darkness lifts to a slightly lighter grey. This is what passes for daylight in January. Dim, grey, depressing light that barely penetrates the shutters. Your house is still dark. The fire provides most of the illumination, but at least outside, you could see if you wanted to go outside. Which you don't. Lunch is the same as breakfast. Thin porridge, small portions, still hungry afterward. This is the routine. Every meal is the same. Every day is the same. The monotony is crushing. There is no variety, no stimulation, just the same cold, the same hunger, the same grey light, the same cramped room. Day after day, week after week, month after month. After lunch, you notice something. The woodpile is getting low. Not critical yet, but low. Your father notices too. He has been tracking the wood consumption, doing mental math. He is worried. You can see it on his face. The woodpile should last until March. Should, but should and will are different things. If the rest of winter is as cold as it has been, you might run out in February. And then what? Your father makes a decision tomorrow. If the weather permits, you'll go cut more wood. It is dangerous. Cutting wood in winter is dangerous. The ground is icy. The trees are frozen. The axe could slip. People get injured cutting winter wood, lose fingers, break legs, die from infections. But the alternative is running out of wood. So you'll risk it. The afternoon drags. You've finished repairing the axe. You've run out of work, so you sit. You and your brother play a simple game. Tic-tac, toe drawn in the ashes near the fire. It is not engaging, but it is something. Anything is better than sitting in silence. Your little sister is crying. She is 6 years old. She is hungry. She doesn't understand why she can't have more food. She doesn't understand rationing. She just knows she is hungry and cold and miserable. Your mother tries to soothe her. Tells her stories. Sings quietly. Eventually the girl falls asleep, curled up near the fire. Sleep is mercy. When you are asleep, you are not aware of the cold or the hunger. Around 3 in the afternoon, the grey light starts fading. The sun is setting. Not that you saw the sun, but the dim light is getting dimmer. By 4 o'clock, it is dark again. 16 hours of darkness. 8 hours of dim grey light. This is January. This is why medieval people slept so much in winter. What else is there to do in the dark? Dinner is announced. Same as breakfast and lunch. Thin porridge. Small portions. By now, you've consumed maybe 900 calories today. You need 2,500. You are running a daily deficit of 1,600 calories. Over a month, that is 48,000 calories. That is about 14 pounds of body weight. You are literally wasting away. By March, you'll have lost 30 or 40 pounds. You'll be a skeleton, but you'll be alive, maybe. After dinner, the family huddles near the fire. This is the evening routine. There is nothing to do, no books to read. You can't read anyway, no entertainment, no music, just sitting, waiting for bedtime. Your father tells a story, a memory from his youth. It is a story you've heard before, many times. But it is something. It fills the silence. It makes the time pass slightly faster. Around 7 o'clock, people start going to bed. 7 o'clock, it'll be dark for another 11 hours. But there is no reason to stay up. The fire is dying down. You are all exhausted. Not from physical work, from cold, from hunger, from the constant stress of survival. So you sleep. You lie down on your wooden platform. You pull the thin blanket over yourself. You press against your brother for warmth, and you drift off. You'll wake up around midnight. Biphasic sleep. It is not intentional. It is just how humans sleep without electric lights. You'll be awake for an hour or two, lying in the cold and dark, thinking about nothing, thinking about everything, thinking about whether you'll survive the winter. Then you'll drift back to sleep. And in the morning, you'll wake up and do it all again, the exact same day, for another month, and another, until spring. If you make it to spring, this is one day in medieval winter. Not the worst day, not an especially hard day, just a normal January day, cold, hungry, boring, survivable, barely. Multiply this by 150 days. That is a winter. That is what medieval peasants endured. Every single year, for their entire lives. But let's talk about the bad days, because the 15th of January was a normal day. There are worse days, much worse. Let's talk about the 23rd of January. 8 days later, the day the blizzard hit. You wake up to the sound of wind, not normal wind, howling wind, screaming wind. Wind that sounds like something alive and angry. You sit up in the dark and immediately know something is wrong. The house is shaking. The walls are creaking. Wind is getting inside, more than usual. The fire has gone completely out. The room is colder than you've ever felt it. Your breath doesn't just fog, it crystallizes. You can hear the ice forming. Your father is already up, trying desperately to restart the fire. But the wind is blowing down through the smoke hole in the roof, making it nearly impossible. He finally gets a small flame going. It is weak, struggling, but it is fire. It is hope. Outside, the wind is unbelievable. You can hear it ripping through the village. Things are breaking, crashing. The storm has been building since midnight. Now it is peaked. The snow isn't falling, it is flying horizontally. You can't see 3 feet outside the window. Everything is white. Moving white. The wind is easily 50 miles per h-hour. The temperature has dropped to single digits. With the wind chill, it is far below zero. This is a blizzard, a medieval blizzard, and you are trapped. Going outside would be suicide. You'd be lost in seconds. You'd freeze in minutes. So you stay inside. You huddle near the pathetic fire, and you wait for it to pass. But here is the problem. The storm damages things. The roof is leaking worse than usual. Snow is blowing in through gaps in the walls. Your house is filling with snow, actual snow. Inside, your father and brother start shoveling the snow out the door, but more keeps coming in. It is a losing battle. The floor is covered. Everything is covered in a thin layer of snow, and the cold is penetrating. The fire can't keep up. The wind is sucking heat out of the room faster than the fire can generate it. The inside temperature is dropping. 10 degrees. 5 degrees. The water in the clay jug is starting to freeze. Your fingers are going numb even though you are right next to the fire. The storm lasts for 12 hours. 12 hours of howling wind, blowing snow, and penetrating cold. When it finally stops, around 6 in the evening, the damage is clear. Your woodpile, which was outside, is completely buried. 3 feet of snow covering it. You'll have to dig it out, in the cold with numb hands. Using a wooden shovel, it'll take hours. But that is not the worst part. The worst part is the damage to the village. 3 roofs collapsed. 3 families are now homeless in the middle of winter. They'll have to crowd in with other families. Double the people in already. Cramped houses. Double the strain on food supplies. Double the chances of disease spreading. The blizzard didn't just bring snow. It brought chaos. And people died. Old Thomas at the edge of the village. He lived alone. His roof collapsed. He was crushed. Or maybe he froze. The neighbors found him the next day when they went to check. Dead. Frozen solid, his house destroyed. Another casualty of winter. He'll be buried in April. His property will be redistributed. His death will be mentioned at church, once and then forgotten. Because dwelling on death doesn't help anyone survive. The days after the blizzard are the worst you've experienced. The snow is deep. Moving around the village requires wading through thigh-deep drifts. Your shoes are immediately soaked. Your feet are immediately frozen. You have to dig out your woodpile. It takes 3 hours. 3 hours in the bitter cold, shoveling snow, finding wood, and carrying it inside. By the time you are done, your hands are white. Completely white. No feeling. You warm them by the fire. The pain is excruciating. But they recover. This time, how many more times? Can you freeze your hands before permanent damage sets in? You don't know. Food becomes more critical after the blizzard. Your family is okay, but some families are not. The 3 families whose roofs collapsed lost some of their food stores. Grain got wet from snow. It'll mold. They'll have to throw it out. That is weeks of food. Gone. They're in trouble. Real trouble. They might not make it to spring. The village holds an emergency meeting in the church. It is the only building large enough. Everyone gathers. Everyone except those too sick or too weak to walk. The village elder speaks. He proposes redistribution. The families who have extra grain should share with the families who don't. This is not optional. This is survival. If some families starve, the whole village is weakened. Dead families mean abandoned homes. Abandoned homes mean a smaller workforce. A smaller workforce means less farming next year. Less farming means everyone starves next winter. So you share, not out of kindness, out of practical necessity. Your father donates £10 of grain. £10 you really can't afford to lose. But you donate it anyway, because next winter, it might be your family that needs help. This is how medieval villages work. Mutual aid through mutual desperation. You help each other survive, not because you are good people, because you are all trapped in the same nightmare. And cooperation is the only strategy that works. But even with redistribution, some families are in bad shape. William's family lost their pig to sickness in September, and now their roof has collapsed. They're going to be hungry, very hungry. Their children will suffer, might die, probably will die. The youngest, a 2-year-old boy, is already weak. He probably won't make it to March. Everyone knows this. Nobody says it, but everyone knows. February arrives, and with it comes the worst period of winter. February is when people break physically, mentally, emotionally. The cold has been relentless for 3 months. The food is dangerously low. Everyone is starving. The darkness continues. The spring is still weeks away, maybe months. Nobody knows, and that uncertainty is its own torture. The hunger in February is different. In November, you are hungry. In December, you are hungrier. In January, you are very hungry. In February, you are starving. Actually starving. Your body has burned through all its fat reserves. Now it is burning muscle. You are weak. Standing up makes you dizzy. Walking any distance leaves you breathless. Your heart is beating irregularly. Your body is shutting down non-essential functions. Your hair is falling out. Your nails are brittle. Your teeth are loose. You are dying, slowly, and you know it. The meals in February are obscene. Breakfast is a 1/4 cup of thin porridge. That is it. Maybe 50 calories. Lunch is the same. Dinner is slightly more, maybe 1/2 cup. You are consuming maybe 400 calories a day. You need 2,500. The math is not in your favor, and yet you keep going. Because what is the alternative? Dying? You are not ready to die. Not yet. So you ration more severely. You eat less. You move less. You sleep more. You conserve every possible calorie. You become a human hibernation experiment. And somehow, impossibly, you continue to exist. Children die in February. A lot of children. Your neighbor's youngest son dies. Just stops breathing one night. Malnutrition and the cold and a respiratory infection. His little body couldn't fight anymore. The parents grieve, but quietly. Loudly grieving takes energy they don't have. They wrap his body in cloth and put it in the shed with the other bodies. There are 4 now. 4 people waiting for spring and burial. 4 fewer mouths to feed, if you want to be brutally practical about it, which you have to be. Sentiment is a luxury. The old die too. Anyone over 50 is at severe risk. Their bodies are already compromised from a lifetime of hard labor and poor nutrition. Winter pushes them over the edge. Your own grandmother died in early February. She was 73. She'd survived 50 winters. This was her 51st. It was one too many. She died peacefully, if death from hypothermia and starvation can be called peaceful. She simply didn't wake up one morning. Her body decided enough was enough. You miss her, but you also feel relief. 1 fewer person sharing the grain. You feel guilty about feeling relief. But the guilt doesn't change the math. More food for fewer people means better survival chances. That is just reality. The village population at the start of November was 80 people. By early March it is down to 72. 8 dead, 10% casualty rate. This is normal. This is every winter. Some winters are worse. The winter of 1282 killed 20%. The winter of 1279 was mild and only killed 5%. You never know which kind of winter you are going to get until you are in the middle of it. And by then, all you can do is endure. March brings no relief. March is supposed to be the light at the end of the tunnel. But early March is just more February. Still cold, still dark, still hungry. The only difference is psychological. You know, spring is coming. Eventually, probably. The days are getting marginally longer. The sun, when it appears, has slightly more warmth. But these are tiny improvements. The reality is still brutal. The food situation in March is critical. Your family is down to maybe 20 pounds of grain. That is supposed to last until May. It won't. Not unless you ration even more severely. So breakfast becomes a few spoonfuls of porridge. Lunch is the same. Dinner is slightly more. You are consuming maybe 300 calories a day now. You are a walking skeleton. You can count your own ribs. Your face is gaunt. Your eyes are sunken. You look like you are dying. Because you are. Just very, very slowly. Foraging becomes necessary in March. As soon as the snow starts melting, you are out there looking for anything edible. Early spring greens. Dandelion leaves. Whatever hasn't died over winter. The foraging is dangerous. The ground is icy. People slip and fall, break bones. And a broken bone in March, when you are already malnourished, is often a death sentence. But you forage anyway, because the alternative is slower starvation. Late March brings the first genuine signs of spring. The temperature climbs above freezing during the day. The snow melts. The ground turns to mud. Thick, heavy, endless mud. But mud means not frozen. Mud means spring is coming. The village starts to relax, just slightly. The worst is over. Probably, maybe. By April, you are fairly confident you'll survive. The food is almost gone, but spring greens are available. The temperature is mild. The daylight lasts 12 hours. You can work outside without losing fingers. Life is returning to the world. And to you. You are still starving. Still weak. Still damaged from 5 months of winter. But you are alive. And alive is a victory. Spring arrives in late April and early May. The grass turns green. Flowers bloom. The birds return. The world explodes with life and colour and warmth. You feel the sun on your face. And remember what warmth feels like. Real warmth, not the desperate heat, seeking you've been doing all winter. Just pleasant, comfortable warmth. It is glorious. But recovery is slow. Your body has been devastated. You've lost 30 pounds. Your muscles have atrophied. You are weak. Climbing a hill leaves you panting. Simple tasks exhaust you. It'll take months to rebuild. Months of eating more, working less, healing slowly. By August you'll be close to normal, just in time for harvest. And then, 4 months later, it begins again. This is the cycle. Survive winter. Recover in spring and summer. Harvest in fall. Prepare for winter. Survive winter again, over and over, year after year, for your entire short, brutal life. Until one winter, you don't survive. Until your body finally gives up. Until the cold or the hunger or the disease finally wins. Because winter always wins eventually. It is just a question of when. And now you understand. You understand why medieval peasants lived such short lives. Why 35 was considered old. Why life expectancy was brutal. Because every winter was a selection event. The weak died. The unlucky died. The sick died. And the survivors were traumatized and damaged and aged beyond their years. This is what winter did. This is what winter was. Not a season, a culling, a test, a slow-motion disaster that killed thousands every single year across Europe. And the worst part, nobody thought this was unusual. This was just life. This was normal. Everyone lived like this. Everyone suffered like this. For centuries. For millennia. Winter was something you endured. Not because you were strong. Not because you were brave. But because you had no choice. Because the alternative was dying. And humans will endure almost anything to avoid dying. So they endured. Day after miserable day. Month after frozen month. Year after brutal year. Until they couldn't anymore. And then they died. And someone else took their place. And the cycle continued. Forever. But let's talk about something that makes medieval winter even more enraging. Let's talk about the fact that while you are freezing and starving in your mud hut, the Lord is doing just fine. The Lord and his family are up in the manor house, and their winter is different. Not easy, but different. And the difference is everything. The manor house is made of stone. Stone walls, 3 feet thick. Stone doesn't have gaps like wattle and daub. Stone blocks wind. The manor has real windows with wooden shutters that actually fit. Some windows even have oiled parchment or thin horn stretched across them, providing light while keeping out cold. The manor has multiple rooms, separate spaces for sleeping, eating, and living. The manor has fireplaces, not fire pits. Actual fireplaces built into the walls, with chimneys that direct smoke outside. The manor is still cold by modern standards. But compared to your house, it is a palace. The Lord's family isn't warm, exactly, but they're not freezing. They have thick wool tapestries hanging on the walls, providing insulation. They have braziers, metal bowls filled with hot coals that can be moved from room to room. They have fur blankets. Actual fur from animals like rabbits, foxes, even deer. They sleep in beds with mattresses. Not great mattresses. Medieval mattresses are basically cloth sacks, stuffed with straw, feathers if you are rich, but they're elevated off the cold floor. They have curtains around them, creating a small, warm space. The Lord's family is cold at night, but they're not hypothermic. And the food situation. The Lord's family is not starving. They have meat, real meat, preserved from the fall slaughter. They have variety, salted fish, cheese, bread made from wheat, not barley. They have spices, pepper, cinnamon, cloves imported at great expense. The food still isn't great. Preservation methods mean everything tastes salty or smoky. But they're eating. They're not rationing desperately. They're not watching their children waste away. They're uncomfortable, but they're not dying. Does this make you angry? It should, because the Lord's comfort is built on your suffering. The taxes you pay, the labour you provide, the grain you surrender. All of that supports the Lord's lifestyle. The Lord can afford thick walls and fireplaces and meat, because you can't. The medieval system is designed to extract resources from the bottom and concentrate them at the top, and winter makes this hierarchy brutally clear. The Lord survives comfortably. You survive barely, if you survive at all. But here is where it gets interesting. Even the Lord can't fully escape winter. The manor is cold, not freezing, but cold. Medieval stone buildings are impossible to heat adequately. The fireplaces help the rooms they're in, but that is it. The corridors are freezing. The outer chambers are freezing. The Lord and his family mostly stay in 1 or 2 rooms all winter, huddled near the fireplace. Not much different from you, huddled near your fire pit. They're better off, yes, but they're not comfortable, and the Lord faces different winter pressures. He is responsible for the entire manor. If the village fails, if too many peasants die, the manor's productivity drops. Fewer workers means less farming next year. Less farming means less food. Less food means less income. The Lord needs you alive, not out of compassion, out of economic necessity. You are an asset, a productive unit. The Lord wants you to survive winter for the same reason a farmer wants his oxen to survive, because you are useful. This is why some lords provide emergency grain during bad winters. Not charity, investment. Keeping peasants alive maintains the labor force, but the amount provided is minimal, enough to prevent mass starvation, not enough to prevent suffering. The Lord does the math. What is the minimum support needed to keep most peasants alive? That is what gets distributed, not 1 grain more. Some lords are worse. Some lords don't care if peasants die. There are always more peasants. Landless poor looking for a place to settle. If half your village dies, the Lord can bring in new families next year. So some lords provide no support. They take their taxes and rents regardless of winter conditions. If you can't pay, you are evicted, which is essentially a death sentence. But the Lord doesn't care. Economics over humanity. Every time. The church is another player in the medieval winter game. The village church is cold, colder than your house, because it is made of stone, and it is large, and there is no real heating. But you are required to attend Mass every Sunday. Required. Not optional. If you don't show up, you are questioned. Are you sick? Are you dead? Or are you shirking your religious duties? The priest keeps track, and the priest reports to the bishop, and being known as someone who skips church has consequences. Social consequences. Legal consequences. So you go, every Sunday, no matter how cold, no matter how weak. You drag yourself to church. The Mass is in Latin. You don't understand Latin. Nobody in the village understands Latin, except the priest. So you stand there, freezing, listening to words you don't comprehend, for an hour. Sometimes longer. The priest isn't deliberately cruel, but he is not in a hurry either. He is as cold as you are, but he is doing his job, performing the sacred rites, ensuring the village's spiritual health, which, according to medieval theology, is more important than physical health. You might die of cold, but at least your soul is safe. That is the logic. The sermons in winter often focus on suffering. The priest talks about job, about endurance, about how suffering brings you closer to God, how your earthly pain is temporary, but heavenly rewards are eternal. This is supposed to be comforting. It is not. You are starving and freezing, and being told this is actually good for your soul doesn't help. But you nod. You say amen. You go through the motions. Because what else can you do? Argue with the priest. That is not going to end well. The church does provide some practical help. The priest might have a small store of grain for emergency distribution. But it is very small, a handful of grain for the truly desperate. It is not enough to feed anyone for long. It is a symbolic gesture as much as a practical one. The church also provides last rites for the dying, which in winter is a frequent service. The priest visits dying villagers, hears confessions, administers final sacraments. This is important to medieval people. Dying without last rites means your soul is at risk. So even when people are too weak to attend church, the priest comes to them. That is his job. But the church's main contribution to winter survival is psychological. The promise of heaven. The assurance that suffering has meaning. That enduring this brutal winter will be rewarded in the afterlife. Whether you believe this or not almost doesn't matter. It is the only hope available. The only narrative that makes the suffering bearable. So you cling to it. You have to. Otherwise, what is the point? Why endure this? For what? The promise of heaven gives suffering a purpose. Without it, you are just suffering pointlessly, and humans can't tolerate pointless suffering. We need meaning. The church provides that meaning. Even if the meaning is just, we'll be rewarded later. Let's talk about disease, because we've touched on it, but we haven't fully explored just how devastating disease is in medieval winter. You are malnourished. Everyone's malnourished, your immune system is compromised, your body is running on fumes, and you are living in close quarters with your entire family. One person gets sick, everyone gets sick, and medieval medicine is useless. Worse than useless, actually. Actively harmful. The most common winter illnesses are respiratory. Coughs, colds, bronchitis, pneumonia. These spread like wildfire through cramped winter households. Someone starts coughing. Within days, everyone's coughing. Some people recover, some people don't. Whether you recover depends on factors mostly outside your control. How strong your immune system is. How bad the infection is. Luck. There is no medicine that helps. The priest might say prayers. Your mother might brew some herbal tea. Neither does anything meaningful. Pneumonia is the big killer. It starts as a cold. The cough gets worse. You develop a fever. You are sweating despite the cold. You can't catch your breath. Your chest hurts. Fluid builds up in your lungs. You are drowning from the inside. and there is nothing anyone can do. No antibiotics, no oxygen, no hospital. You either recover on your own, or you die. In winter, with malnutrition and cold stress, you usually die. The death from pneumonia is slow, days of suffering, gasping for breath, coughing up, phlegm, fever dreams. Your family watches helplessly. They can't help. They can only wait to see if you recover, wait to see if you die. And when you die, they wrap your body in cloth and put it with the others, another winter casualty, another body, waiting for spring burial. But respiratory illnesses aren't the only threat. There is dysentery, food poisoning from eating spoiled food. You are so hungry that you eat things you shouldn't. Moldy bread, rotten vegetables, meat that is gone bad. Your stomach revolts. You spend days with diarrhea and vomiting. In summer, this is unpleasant. In winter, when you are already malnourished and dehydrated and cold, this can kill you. The diarrhea dehydrates you. You need water. But drinking water might make you sicker. Small beer is safer, but it doesn't rehydrate as well. You are caught in a trap. Drink water and risk more sickness, or don't drink and die of dehydration. Some people choose wrong. Some people die from something as stupid as bad food. Then there are injuries. In a house with a fire pit and cramped conditions and darkness and exhaustion, accidents happen. People burn themselves, touch the pot handle, trip and fall into the fire. Burns in medieval times are horrifying. There is no burn treatment, no antibiotics for the inevitable infection. A serious burn is often fatal. The skin gets infected. Gangrene sets in. The infection spreads. You develop sepsis. You die. All because you accidentally touched a hot pot handle in the dark. Cuts and wounds get infected easily. You cut yourself repairing a tool. It is a small cut, barely worth mentioning. But it gets infected. Your hand swells up, turns red. Hot to the touch. Red streaks start spreading up your arm. That is blood poisoning. That is sepsis. That is death in 3 or 4 days. There is no treatment. Some people try poultices, herbs, prayers. None of it works. Once sepsis starts, you are doomed. Medieval life is full of these stupid, preventable deaths. Cut yourself. Die 3 days later. That is reality. And then there is the mental toll. We've talked about the physical suffering, but the psychological suffering is equally brutal. 5 months of darkness, cold, hunger, and boredom. 5 months of watching people die. 5 months of wondering if you are next. This breaks people. Medieval peasants don't have a concept of depression or PTSD, but they experience it. The hopelessness, the despair, the numbness. By late February, many people have simply stopped. They're not suicidal, exactly. They're just done. They lie by the fire and stare and don't speak and don't engage. They've given up. Some recover when spring comes. Some don't. Some die not from cold or hunger, but from having lost the will to continue. Seasonal affective disorder is real and brutal in medieval winter. The lack of sunlight affects brain chemistry. Serotonin levels drop. Melatonin production is disrupted. You become depressed, lethargic. You sleep more and more, not just because there is nothing to do, but because your brain is malfunctioning from lack of light. This makes everything worse. You need to move, to work, to maintain your body, but you can't. You are too depressed. You just sleep, and sleeping burns fewer calories, which is good. But sleeping also means you are not maintaining the fire, not preparing food, not doing the small tasks that keep you alive. It is a spiral. Depression makes you less functional. Being less functional makes your situation worse. Your situation being worse makes you more depressed. Some people snap. The isolation, the stress, the constant fear. It is too much. Family violence increases in winter. Husbands beat wives. Parents beat children. Not because they're bad people, because they're broken. They're under impossible stress with no outlet. The anger has to go somewhere. It goes toward the people around them. This isn't excused, but it is explained. Medieval winter breaks people psychologically, and broken people do horrible things. Suicide is rare, but not unheard of. The church forbids it. Suicide means eternal damnation. But some people reach a point where even eternal damnation seems better than one more day of winter. They walk out into a blizzard. They don't come back. Their body is found in spring. Everyone knows what happened. Nobody talks about it. The church refuses to bury them in consecrated ground. They're buried at a crossroads. A shameful death. But for the person who chose it, maybe it was mercy. We'll never know. The village dynamics shift in winter. Social hierarchies that exist in summer blur slightly. Everyone's suffering. The richest peasant family, the one with the most land, the best house. They're still suffering. Not as much maybe, they have more grain, more firewood. But they're not comfortable. They're just less uncomfortable. And in the shared misery of winter, old grudges sometimes fade. Sometimes, other times, they intensify. If your family is starving, and your neighbour has extra grain and won't share, that breeds resentment. That breeds hate. Come spring, scores might be settled, but during winter, everyone's too weak to fight. So tensions simmer, waiting for spring. Occasionally, something brings the village together, a collective crisis that requires cooperation. Like when the well freezes, the village well is the only water source. If it freezes solid, everyone's in trouble. So the men gather, they break the ice, they dig deeper, they work together because they have to. In these moments, you remember that you are all in this together. You are all peasants. You are all suffering. You are all just trying to survive. There is a brief sense of community, solidarity. Then the crisis passes, and everyone goes back to their individual struggles. There are also tiny moments of joy, brief respites from the endless misery. Someone's baby survives a dangerous illness. There is a moment of celebration. Someone makes a joke, and everyone laughs. The laughter is precious. It is so rare. Most of winter is grey and grim. But occasionally, there is a flash of humour, a moment of lightness. These moments are rare enough to be remembered. Years later, someone will say, "Remember that winter when Thomas slipped on the ice and landed in the pig trough. Remember how we all laughed." These small memories sustain people. They prove that even in the darkest times, there can be moments of joy. Not many, not enough, but some. Children, despite everything, still find ways to play. Not often, not for long. But sometimes, on a less cold day, children will go outside and play in the snow, build snowmen, have snowball fights. For brief moments, they're just kids. Not starving, exhausted, traumatized kids. Just kids playing. Adults watch and feel complicated emotions. Relief that the children can still experience joy. Sadness that this joy is so rare. Fear that this might be the last winter some of these children see. But mostly they just let the children play. Because childhood in medieval times is already brutal enough. Let them have their moments. The village storyteller becomes important in winter. Every village has someone who is good at telling stories, remembering the old tales, legends, folklore, history. In the long dark evenings, families gather and the storyteller performs. The stories are familiar. Everyone's heard them before. But that is the point. The familiarity is comforting. The stories provide a mental escape. For a little while, you are not in your freezing house. You are in the story. You are somewhere else. Someone else. The stories don't change your situation, but they make it bearable. For an hour, that is worth something. Music exists. Sort of someone might have a simple flute, carved from wood or bone. Someone else might have a drum, just a piece of wood or a stretched hide. The music is simple, repetitive, but it fills the silence. It provides rhythm, structure, a sense that life continues, that humans still create, still express. Even in the depths of winter, even at the edge of survival, people make music. It is a defiant act, a refusal to let winter destroy everything human. Religious festivals punctuate winter, Christmas, Epiphany, Candlemas. These provide structure to the endless winter months, something to look forward to. Christmas, in particular, is important, not because of gifts or decorations. Medieval peasants don't exchange gifts. They don't decorate. But Christmas means church, and church means community, and community means you are not alone. There might be a special meal, a bit more meat than usual, a bit more ale, not a feast. Medieval peasant Christmas is not a feast, but it is more than a regular meal. That is something. The 12 days of Christmas provide a break from certain kinds of work. You still have to tend the fire, prepare food, survive. But you are not supposed to do unnecessary labour. This is church law. These are holy days. Days of rest. Of course, peasants mostly rest anyway in winter because there is no work to do. But the official sanction makes it feel different. You are not lazy, you are pious, you are observing holy days. That distinction matters psychologically. But religious festivals also highlight the gap between rich and poor. The Lord's family celebrates Christmas with a real feast, multiple dishes. Meat, wine, entertainment, musicians, performers. The manor hall is decorated with evergreen boughs. There is actual joy, laughter, warmth. Meanwhile, you are in your mud hut, eating a bowl of porridge with a tiny piece of pork, feeling grateful for that much. The contrast is stark, and it reminds you constantly of your place in the hierarchy. You are at the bottom, they're at the top, and winter doesn't change that. Nothing changes that. Let's talk about the transition to spring more, because we've covered the horror of winter, but the relief of spring deserves attention. The first real sign of spring is usually sound. You hear water dripping, ice melting. After months of frozen silence, suddenly there is the sound of water moving. It is one of the most beautiful sounds you'll ever hear. Water dripping from your roof, trickling through the village. It means the temperature is above freezing. It means winter is losing its grip. Then comes the smell. For months everything has been frozen and dead. There is no smell except smoke and human waste and decay. But as spring arrives, the earth thaws, and with it comes the smell of soil, wet earth. It is pungent, organic, alive. You step outside and smell earth for the first time in 5 months, and it is overwhelming. It smells like hope, like life, like survival. The first green shoots appear in late March or early April. Tiny green things pushing up through the mud. New growth. Life returning. You see these shoots and feel something you haven't felt in months. Optimism. The world is not dead. It was just sleeping, and now it is waking up. And you are still here to see it. You made it. You survived. The birds return. Winter birds are mostly quiet, conserving energy. But spring brings migrating birds back. Suddenly there is bird song, chirping. The sound of life. After months of grey silence, the world has sound again. Colour again. Movement again. The trees start budding. Tiny green buds on dead, looking branches. The transformation from dead winter to living spring happens fast. 1 week it is brown and grey and frozen. 2 weeks later there is green everywhere. The world comes back to life, and with it, so do you. Your body starts recovering in spring. The first fresh greens you eat taste like nothing you've ever experienced. Fresh food after months of preserved, stale, mouldy food. The taste is intense. Overwhelming, your body desperately needs the vitamins. You can feel yourself getting stronger. Slowly your energy returns. Bit by bit, your skin starts looking healthier. The grey pallor fades. Your eyes brighten. You are not healthy yet. It'll take months to fully recover, but you are recovering. That is enough. The village holds a spring gathering, usually around May Day. It is not a celebration. Exactly. You are still too weak for celebration. But it is an acknowledgement. You made it. The village made it. You lost some people. 8 dead, but 72 survived. That is a victory. A grim victory, but a victory nonetheless. People gather in the village square. There is no formal ceremony. Just people standing together in the spring sunshine, alive, grateful to be alive, amazed to be alive, because making it through a medieval winter is never guaranteed. It is always a gamble, and this year you won. But even as you are recovering, even as spring brings relief, there is a shadow, the knowledge that in 6 months it starts again. Autumn will come, winter will come, and you'll have to do this all over again. The suffering, the cold, the hunger, the fear, every single year until you die. That knowledge never leaves you. Even in the warmth of spring, even in the abundance of summer, you know winter is coming. You are always aware of it, always preparing for it, always dreading it. Some people don't wait for winter to kill them. Some people, having survived one particularly brutal winter, decide they can't do it again. They leave. They abandon the village. They become wanderers, beggars, landless poor. This is incredibly dangerous. Without land, you have no way to produce food. You are dependent on charity or theft. Most wanderers die within a year. But some people choose that risk over facing another winter. They'd rather gamble on the road than endure the certainty of winter suffering. It is not a rational choice. But after what they've been through, rationality isn't the primary concern. Most people stay, not because they want to, because leaving is even worse. At least in the village, you have your house, your family, your community, your small plot of land. It is not much, but it is something. And something is better than nothing. So you stay, and you prepare. And when November comes, you face it again. Because what else can you do? The cycle continues. Year after year, generation after generation. Your children will experience the same winters you experienced. Your grandchildren, if you live long enough to have grandchildren, will face the same challenges. Nothing changes. Nothing improves. Medieval technology doesn't advance enough to make winter significantly easier. The houses stay cold. The food stays scarce. The death rates stay high. This is just how it is. How it has always been, how it will always be, for centuries, for millennia. Until finally, slowly, gradually, over hundreds of years, technology and social organization improve enough that winter becomes merely uncomfortable instead of deadly. But that is far in the future. Right now, in 1286, winter is death, and you are just trying to survive it. So here is the final truth about medieval winter. It was impossible. Surviving it was impossible. And yet, people did. Millions of people. For hundreds of years, they survived the impossible. Not because they were stronger than us, not because they were braver, but because they had no choice. Survival wasn't optional. It was the only option. So they endured. They suffered. They watched people die. They nearly died themselves. And they kept going. Day after miserable day. Year after brutal year. Because giving up meant death. And humans will do almost anything to avoid death. Even endure the impossible. And that is the story of medieval winter. Not a fairy tale. Not a romantic past. Just pure, brutal, grinding survival. 5 months of cold. 5 months of hunger. 5 months of darkness. 5 months of darkness. 5 months of death. Repeated every single year. For every peasant. For their entire short, brutal lives. This is what winter meant when winter actually mattered. When winter was the difference between life and death. When winter killed thousands and traumatized millions and shaped the entire course of medieval life. Let's get specific. Let's talk about actual people. Real medieval peasants who faced real medieval winters. Let's talk about Margaret. She is 32 years old, which makes her middle-aged by medieval standards. She is your neighbor. Her house is 3 doors down. She has 5 children, ages 2 through 14. Her husband died last spring. Farming accident. Crushed by a falling tree. Now Margaret is a widow facing winter alone. Well, not alone. She has her children, but children aren't help. Not in winter, they're mouths to feed, bodies to keep warm. Responsibilities she can barely manage. Margaret's situation is desperate. Without a husband, she can't do heavy labor. She couldn't cut enough firewood. She managed maybe 2 cords. That is half of what she needs. Her food stores are similarly inadequate. She has some grain, but not enough. Maybe enough for 3 people for 4 months. She has 5 people and needs to last 6 months. The math doesn't work. Everyone in the village knows Margaret won't make it through winter. Not all of her family. Some of them will die. Probably the youngest. Maybe 2 of them. Maybe more. The village discusses what to do about Margaret. Should they help? Can they help? Every family is stretched thin. Giving grain to Margaret means less grain for your own family. Giving firewood means your own woodpile shrinks. It is a zero-sum game. Resources are finite. Charity might kill your own children to save hers. So what do you do? The village decides on minimal support. Each family that can afford it donates a small amount of grain, maybe £5 per family. 10 families participate. That is £50 of grain for Margaret. It is something. It might buy her another month, but it is not enough. Everyone knows. But it is all the village can spare. Margaret accepts the grain with dignity. She knows what this means. She knows her family is still doomed, but she thanks everyone. She has no other choice. By February, Margaret's situation has deteriorated exactly as predicted. Her youngest child, the 2-year-old boy, dies. Malnutrition and cold and a respiratory infection his small body couldn't fight. Margaret grieves, but quietly. Loudly grieving takes energy she needs for the living. She wraps his body and puts it in the shed. Another body waiting for spring. Her 4-year-old daughter is next. She is weak, fading. She'll probably die before March. Margaret knows this. She is watching her children die, and she can't stop it. She has no more food to give, no more warmth to provide. She is doing everything possible, and it is not enough. It is never enough. The 14-year-old son takes matters into his own hands. He starts stealing, not from neighbours. That would cause conflict. He steals from the Lord's stores. The manor has grain. Lots of grain. The Lord won't miss a sack or 2. So one night, the boy sneaks to the manor, breaks into the grain storage, steals a sack of barley, probably £20. He brings it home. Margaret is horrified. If they're caught, the punishment is severe. Amputation, hanging, death. But the boy argues we're dying anyway. Might as well risk it. Margaret can't argue with that logic. They're starving. Stealing might get them killed. Not stealing will definitely kill them. So they keep the grain. They don't tell anyone. They eat it slowly, carefully, making it last, and they survive February. Barely. The boy steals twice more. Once in early March, once in late March. Each time, the risk is enormous. Each time, he is lucky. He is not caught. And the stolen grain saves the family. By April, Margaret's family has survived. 3 of 5 children remain. The youngest 2 are dead. But 3 survived. Margaret survived. And the boy, the 14-year-old thief, saved them. He'll never tell anyone outside the family. The secret goes to the grave. But within the family, he is a hero. He did what was necessary. He broke the law. He risked death. And he saved his family. This is medieval morality. Not abstract. Not theoretical. Practical survival. Focused, stealing is wrong. Unless it saves your family, then it is necessary. The law says stealing is punished by death. But the law also creates conditions where people must steal to survive. So who is really guilty? The boy who stole grain, or the system that hoarded grain while families starved? Medieval peasants don't philosophize about this. They just do what they must, and live with the consequences. Let's talk about another villager, Edmund. He is 55, which is ancient. He is a craftsman, a carpenter. He makes and repairs things. In summer, he is valuable. In winter, he is vulnerable. He lives alone. His wife died years ago. His children left to find work elsewhere. He has no family support, no one to share resources with, no one to tend the fire while he sleeps. He is alone. And alone in medieval winter is incredibly dangerous. Edmund's winter goes badly from the start. In November he falls. The ground is icy. His feet slide. He lands hard. Something in his hip breaks. Not completely. Just a crack. Maybe a fracture. Maybe just a bad bruise. He doesn't know. There is no way to know. No x-rays. No doctors. Just pain. Intense pain. He can barely walk. Each step is agony. His mobility is severely compromised. He can't fetch firewood from his pile. He can't go to the well for water. He can't do anything without pain. The village helps Edmund. People bring him firewood, bring him water, bring him small amounts of food. But they can't do this every day. They have their own families, their own problems. So Edmund gets help maybe twice a week. The rest of the time he is on his own. He rations his firewood carefully. He moves as little as possible. He eats almost nothing to make his food last. He is trying to survive until spring, when the injury might heal enough for him to function again. But Edmund's isolation is more than physical. It is psychological. He is alone, completely alone, in a one-room house, for months. No conversation, no human contact except occasional visits from neighbours. The solitude is crushing. Humans are social animals. We need interaction. Edmund gets maybe 1 conversation per week. Brief conversations. Practical conversations. How are you doing? Here is some food. Take care. Then they leave, and he is alone again. For days, the loneliness might be worse than the cold. Edmund talks to himself, out loud, just to hear a human voice. Even if it is his own. He tells himself stories, remembers his wife. Their conversations. Their life together. He talks to her as if she is still there. This isn't madness. It is survival. A coping mechanism. A way to maintain sanity when external stimulation is zero. He knows she is not really there. But pretending helps. It fills the silence. By March, Edmund is in bad shape. The hip injury hasn't healed. He has lost massive amounts of weight. He is weak. Confused. The isolation has affected his mind. He is not always sure what is real anymore. He sees things sometimes. Movement in the shadows. Faces in the fire. His dead wife standing in the corner. He knows these are hallucinations. Products of malnutrition and isolation and stress. But knowing doesn't make them less real in the moment. Spring comes. Edmund survives. Barely. He is permanently damaged. The hip never fully heals. He'll walk with a limp for the rest of his life. Maybe 2 more years. Maybe 3. He'll never work as a carpenter again. He'll become dependent on village charity. A burden on the community. This is the fate of many old people who survive a particularly bad winter. They survive, but they're broken. No longer productive. Just waiting to die. It is grim, but it is reality. Let's talk about the young specifically. Let's talk about your brother. He is 15. This is his 15th winter. He has survived all of them so far, which is impressive. Infant and childhood mortality in medieval times is brutal. Surviving to 15 means he has already beaten long odds. But 15 is a dangerous age. He is old enough to work like an adult, old enough to contribute meaningfully to family survival. But his body is still growing. He needs more calories than he is getting. His teenage metabolism demands energy that is not available. Your brother is constantly hungry, more hungry than you, and you are starving. He thinks about food obsessively, dreams about it. Every conversation somehow circles back to food. What he would eat if food was available. What meals he remembers from childhood, back when food was more plentiful. He is fixated, obsessed. This is what starvation does to the brain. Food becomes the only thing that matters. Your brother does something stupid in February. He is so hungry, so desperate, that he eats raw grain. Not cooked into porridge, just raw grain, chewed and swallowed. This is dangerous. Raw grain is hard to digest. It expands in the stomach. It can cause blockages. Your brother doesn't care he is hungry. He sneaks grain from the family store and eats it raw, just a handful, then another. Then another. Within hours he is in pain. Stomach cramps. Severe pain. He has doubled over. Can't stand upright. Your mother realizes what happened. She is furious and terrified. Furious that he stole food. Terrified that he has seriously injured himself. There is nothing she can do except wait and see if his body can process the grain. If it can, he'll be okay. If it can't, he could die. Internal blockage. Ruptured stomach. Death. Your brother survives. After a day of agony, his body processes the grain. He is okay physically, but he has learned nothing. A week later, he does it again. Not as much this time, just a little. But still, he is stealing food from the family store. Food that is carefully rationed. Food that needs to last until April. Every handful he steals is food someone else won't have. Your father catches him the second time. The punishment is swift and brutal. A beating. Not gentle. A real beating. Your father's belt. Hard and fast. Until your brother is crying and promising never to do it again. Does this seem cruel? It is. But it is also necessary. Your brother's theft threatens the entire family's survival. If he continues, the grain runs out early. Then everyone starves. One person's selfishness can kill the entire family. So the punishment has to be severe enough to deter future theft. It has to hurt. It has to be memorable. Your father takes no joy in this. He is beating his own son, but he is saving the family. That is the calculation. That is medieval parenting. Brutal, practical, necessary. Your brother doesn't steal again, but he remains hungry. They all do. The beating didn't solve the underlying problem. There is still not enough food. The beating just ensured he'll suffer hunger rather than acting on it. This is medieval childhood. Even the lucky ones who survive face constant hunger, pain, and harsh discipline. There is no gentleness, no understanding, just survival. And whatever it takes to achieve survival is justified. Let's talk about a winter everyone remembers. The winter of 1282, 4 years ago. The bad one. The winter that killed 20% of the village. Old people still talk about it. It is the benchmark. Every winter is compared to 1282. Is it as bad as 82? Not yet. Could it get that bad? Hopefully not. The winter of 1282 is legend. Horror story. Warning. What made 1282 so bad? Everything went wrong. The harvest in 1281 was poor. Summer was too wet. Crops rotted in the fields. The grain stores going into winter were maybe 60% of normal. That is catastrophic. Then winter came early, late October instead of November. And it was cold, brutally cold. Temperatures far below normal. And it stayed cold. November, December, January, February, March, all abnormally cold. The kind of cold where water freezes inside your house, where your breath freezes in the air, where touching metal with bare hands tears your skin off. The combination of low food stores and extreme cold was deadly. By December, people were already dying. By January, multiple people were dying every week. By February, the village had lost a dozen people. The survivors were skeletal, walking dead, too weak to function. The village basically shut down. People stopped attending church. Too weak to walk. Stopped visiting neighbors. Too weak to care. Everyone retreated into their houses and just tried to survive hour by hour. The death toll was horrific. 16 people out of 80, 20%. Gone, the village priest worked overtime. Last rites, confessions, prayers for the dying. He was exhausted, traumatized. He'd never seen death on this scale. Neither had anyone else. It was apocalyptic. By March, the village had the feeling of a graveyard. More dead than alive, it seemed. The survivors were haunted, hollow, eyed broken. Spring came eventually. The survivors buried the dead, 16 graves. A significant portion of the churchyard filled in one season. The village held a memorial service. The priest spoke about God's will, about testing faith, about rewards in heaven. But his words rang hollow. What kind of God kills 20% of a village? What kind of test is that? People nodded and said amen, but you could see it in their faces. Faith was shaken, not destroyed, but shaken. Medieval religion is all they have. But winters like 1282 test that faith severely. The village recovered, sort of emotionally, never fully. But practically life continued. New families moved in to take over abandoned homes. The population rebuilt. By 1284 the village was back to normal numbers, but the memory of 1282 remained. The old people who survived carry it with them, the trauma, the grief. The knowledge that winter can be that bad, that deadly, that random. They survived 1282, but only barely. And they know another winter like that could come any time. Next year, the year after, it is always a possibility. Always hanging over them. A shadow that never fades. That is why every winter, no matter how normal, has an edge of fear. Because it could become 1282. It could become the bad one. The one that kills 20%. Or more, you never know. You can't predict. You just prepare as best you can and hope. Hope it is a normal winter. Hope it is not 1282 again. Because if it is, some of you won't survive. And you don't know who. Could be anyone. Could be you. Let's talk about one more thing. The survivor's guilt. Because surviving medieval winter isn't just physically exhausting. It is emotionally devastating. You survive. Your grandmother didn't. Your baby brother didn't. Your neighbor brother didn't. Your neighbor's children didn't. You did. Why? Why you and not them? It is random. Bad luck. Weak immunity. Wrong place, wrong time. But the guilt remains. You lived. They died. And you consumed resources they could have used. If you had eaten less, would they have had more? Would that have saved them? You don't know. But the question haunts you. Medieval peasants don't have words for survivors' guilt. Don't have the concept. But they feel it. The weight of survival. The burden of continuing while others didn't. It is there in the silence. The way people don't talk about the dead. The way spring feels hollow even though you survived. You are alive. You should be grateful. You are grateful, but you are also haunted. By the faces, the memories, the empty spaces at the table, the missing voices. They're gone. You are here. And that feels wrong somehow, even though it is not your fault. The village priest offers absolution. It is not your fault, he says. It is God's will. God chooses who lives and who dies. You are not responsible, but that doesn't help. Because if it is God's will that your baby brother died, what does that say about God? If God chose to kill innocent children, is God good? These are dangerous questions. Heretical questions. Questions you don't ask out loud, but you think them. In the dark, in the silence, you think them and feel guilty for thinking them. Because questioning God is a sin. But how can you not question? When the evidence is so brutal, most people suppress these questions, push them down, focus on survival, on practical matters, on the next day, the next meal, the next winter. There is no time for existential crisis. You have work to do, fields to plough, grain to plant, firewood to cut for next winter. Life continues. You continue, whether you want to or not, whether it makes sense or not. You continue because stopping means dying, and you are not ready to die yet. Even though sometimes in the darkest moments, you wonder if death might be easier. But you keep going, because that is what humans do. We keep going. Even when it is impossible, even when it doesn't make sense. We keep going, because the alternative is giving up, and giving up is not an option. So this is medieval winter, in all its complexity. Not just cold and hunger, but also guilt, trauma, moral ambiguity, stolen grain, brutal discipline, survivor's guilt, shaken faith, and the constant knowledge that this will happen again. Every year for the rest of your short, brutal life. This is what winter was, not a season, a test, a trauma, a recurring nightmare that shaped every aspect of medieval peasant life. The fear of winter hung over everything, every decision made with winter in mind, every action evaluated through the lens of winter survival. Winter was the tyrant, the ultimate authority. The thing that determined who lived and who died, more powerful than the Lord, more feared than the plague, more certain than death itself. Because death comes once, winter comes every year, and every year it takes some people. And you never know if this year it'll be you. Let's talk about the social fabric of winter, because winter didn't just test individuals, it tested communities, the village as a whole, and the results were complicated. Winter could bring people together through shared suffering, or it could tear them apart through competition for scarce resources. Sometimes both at once. The village meetings in winter were tense affairs. Everyone gathered in the church, the only building large enough and marginally warmer than individual homes, to discuss collective problems. Who needs help? Who can provide help? Who is hoarding resources? Who is likely to die? These weren't pleasant conversations. They were brutal calculations of community survival. Someone would stand up and report that William's family had lost their pig in September and their roof collapsed in the blizzard. They need grain. The room would go quiet. Everyone doing mental math. If I give William grain, do I have enough for my own family? If William's family starves, does that weaken the village too much for spring planting? If I don't give grain and William's children die, can I live with that? These calculations happened in seconds, in silence. Then someone would offer 5 pounds of grain, then another, small amounts, grudging amounts, but amounts nonetheless, because the alternative was watching neighbours starve. And while medieval peasants were practical, they weren't monsters. But the resentment was real. You are giving food to William's family while your own children are hungry. You see William's wife at church the next week, and you can't help thinking that is my grain keeping her alive while my daughter is getting thinner every day. You don't say it, but you think it, and she knows you are thinking it. The tension is palpable, unspoken, but absolutely present. Some families refused to participate in redistribution, not out of pure selfishness, though that played a role, but out of fear. We barely have enough for ourselves. If we give any away, we might die. It is that stark. The village elder might pressure them. The priest might invoke Christian charity. But fear is stronger than social pressure. Some families hoarded their grain and endured the social consequences. Dirty looks, whispered criticism, being remembered as the family that didn't help when others were dying. That reputation could last generations, but at least you'd be alive to have a reputation. Other families gave too much out of genuine generosity, or social pressure, or religious conviction. They gave more than they could afford, and by March, they were the ones in trouble. They were the ones needing help, and the village had to redistribute again. This created a complex web of obligations. I helped you in December, now you help me in March. I gave you £10, you gave me 5. Who owes whom? Medieval peasants kept mental ledgers of these debts. Not written down, they couldn't write, but remembered, precisely. Winters were survived through networks of reciprocal obligation that were as complex as any modern financial system. Children learned these social dynamics early. You watched your parents calculate how much to give. You heard the discussions about who deserved help and who didn't. You learned that survival was both individual and communal. You couldn't survive alone, but you couldn't sacrifice yourself for others either. The balance was delicate. The lessons were harsh. By age 10, you understood the economics of survival, better than most modern adults ever will. The village also had informal insurance systems. If your house burned down in summer, the village helped you rebuild. Not out of kindness, out of self-interest. Because next year, it might be your house. This same logic applied to winter disasters. If your roof collapsed, neighbours helped repair it. If your grain got wet, others shared. But these weren't unlimited safety nets. They were limited, fragile, based on the assumption that disasters would be distributed somewhat evenly. When they weren't, when one family had multiple disasters, the system broke down. The village could help once, maybe twice. But if you kept having problems, eventually the village's resources and patience ran out. Then you were on your own, and on your own, in medieval, winter meant death. The concept of privacy basically disappeared in winter, not just physically because families lived in one room, but socially. Everyone knew everyone's business. How much grain you had, how much firewood, whether your children were sick, whether your marriage was strained, whether you were hiding resources. The village operated under constant surveillance, not government surveillance. Community surveillance. Your neighbours watched, they knew, and they judged. This prevented hoarding but also created immense social pressure. You couldn't make a decision without considering what the village would think. Your autonomy was severely limited, not by law, but by social necessity. Because being exiled from the village, being cut off from the social support network, was essentially a death sentence. So you conformed, you participated. You gave when expected to give and received when permitted to receive. You followed the unwritten rules that governed collective survival. Some villages handled winter better than others. Villages with good leadership, fair resource distribution, and strong social cohesion had better survival rates. Villages with poor leadership, corruption, or social divisions had higher death rates. The quality of your village leadership could literally determine whether you lived or died. A good village elder made the hard decisions fairly, organized communal resources effectively, settled disputes before they became violent. A bad village elder played favorites, hoarded resources, or failed to organize collective action, and people died as a result. The priest played a complicated role in winter villages. He was supposed to be a moral leader, encouraging charity and community support. But he was also practical. He knew that unlimited charity meant everyone starved equally. So he preached balance. Help your neighbor, but don't kill yourself doing it. Give what you can spare, but spare enough for your own family. This was a delicate theological position. How much suffering should you accept to help others? Where is the line between Christian charity and suicidal generosity? The priest didn't have clear answers. He just tried to keep the village functioning and people's souls safe. Preferably in that order. Let's talk about the women's experience of winter specifically, because winter was hell for everyone, but it was a special kind of hell for women. Women were responsible for making the inadequate resources stretch. You were given half the grain you need and told to feed the family until spring. That is your job. Figure it out. And if you fail, if people starve, that is your failure. Never mind that you were given an impossible task. Never mind that no one could succeed. It is still your fault. Women managed the fire, keeping it going day and night, waking up every few hours to add wood, never letting it go out, because restarting a fire in a cold, damp house could take hours. Hours without heat. Hours of danger, so you don't let it go out, which means you don't sleep. Not really. Not for 5 months. By spring, women were more exhausted than anyone. They'd spent the entire winter in a state of partial sleep deprivation, constantly monitoring the fire, the food, the children, the sick family members. It is no wonder medieval women aged so fast. By 30, you looked 50. By 40, you looked ancient. If you made it to 40. Women also managed illness. When someone got sick, you took care of them. You tried herbal remedies that might or might not work. You comforted the dying. You prepared bodies for burial. You managed the emotional labor of loss. Your child dies, you grieve briefly. Then you take care of the other children who are also grieving. Your husband gets sick. You nurse him while still doing all your other work. There is no time off. No bereavement leave. You process grief while performing the constant labor of survival. This created a kind of emotional numbness. You had to shut down feelings just to function, because if you let yourself fully feel the horror of your situation, you'd collapse. And you can't collapse. People depend on you. So you don't feel, you just do. Women in winter lived in a constant state of vigilance, watching food supplies dwindle, watching the woodpile shrink, watching children grow thinner, watching the sick grow weaker, watching for signs of disaster. A cough that might become pneumonia, a cut that might become infected, a behavioral change that might signal serious illness. You are always watching, always worrying, always calculating. The mental load was staggering, and it was invisible. Your husband knew he was cold and hungry, but he didn't know you were also carrying the weight of everyone's survival in your head, making constant micro decisions about resource allocation. Who gets the slightly larger portion? Who gets the warmer spot by the fire? Who needs more rest? These tiny decisions accumulated into the difference between life and death, and you made them constantly, for months, with no recognition and no rest. Pregnancy in winter was catastrophic. If you were pregnant going into winter, your chances of surviving childbirth dropped dramatically. Your body was malnourished. You were cold. There was no medical help. If complications arose during birth, you died. Period. Many women didn't even announce pregnancies until spring, partially because early miscarriage rates were so high it seemed premature to announce, but also because a winter pregnancy was seen as a likely death sentence. The community would look at a pregnant woman in November and think, well, she is probably not making it. Not said aloud, but understood. Everyone knew the statistics. Childbirth in optimal conditions killed many women. Childbirth, while starving and freezing, killed most. Some women tried to induce miscarriages early in winter pregnancies, not because they didn't want children, but because carrying to term meant probable death. Better to lose the pregnancy than lose your life and leave your existing children motherless. The herbs used for this purpose were the same ones used for other medicinal purposes. Pennyroyal, tansy, rue. Officially, these were for stomach complaints. Unofficially, everyone knew. The church condemned abortion as mortal sin. But the church wasn't going to die in childbirth. Women made the calculations that the church didn't have to make, and they did what they had to do, and they confessed it as sin, and they did penance, and they survived. And that was more important than theological purity. Women's social networks were crucial for winter survival. Women helped each other in ways that men didn't, sharing childcare, sharing food preparation duties, sharing information about who was sick, who needed help, who had resources. These networks operated under the official social structure. Men made the formal decisions in village meetings, but women made the informal decisions that actually kept people alive. Your neighbour's wife tells you that Margaret's family is down to their last 5 pounds of grain, but is too proud to ask for help. You quietly bring Margaret a small bag of grain and tell her it is extra, you can't use. She knows you are lying. You know she knows. But the fiction preserves her dignity while getting her the help she needs. These networks of women doing quiet resource redistribution saved countless lives. But winter also strained women's friendships. You are both starving. You are both desperate. You see your friends' children eating while yours are hungry. Jealousy creeps in. Resentment. You used to be close. But winter survival instincts override friendship. You start avoiding each other, not out of hatred, out of the pain of comparison. Her family has slightly more than yours, or yours has slightly more than hers. Either way, the inequality hurts. By spring, friendships have fractured. Some repair, some don't. Winter divided people as often as it united them. Young women of marriageable age faced specific horrors in winter. If you were 14 or 15 unmarried, living with your family, you were a burden, another mouth to feed. Your parents loved you, but they also calculated, if we marry her off now, that is one less person consuming our grain. So winter weddings happened. Not romantic. Transactional, your parents arranged your marriage quickly. You moved to your husband's family's house, and now you were their problem. Your first winter as a married woman was often spent in a stranger's house, with a stranger's family in terrible conditions, while also trying to navigate a new marriage. The stress was unimaginable. Some young brides didn't survive their first winter. Disease, childbirth, or simple despair. They gave up. Stopped eating. Stopped trying. Just faded away. Depression, in modern terms. But medieval people didn't have that framework. They just said she had a weak constitution, or she was called to heaven young. More comforting than admitting that despair killed her. Let's talk about the old men too, because old women had it bad, but old men had it differently bad. If you were a man over 50, you were acutely aware that you were consuming resources you could no longer fully replace with labour. You couldn't work as hard as younger men. Your body was broken from decades of manual labour. Your joints hurt constantly. Your back was wrecked. Your hands didn't work properly, but you still ate. You still took firewood. You still occupied space. And you knew that every bit you consumed was less for the younger generation. Some old men voluntarily ate less. Not suicide exactly, just deprioritizing themselves, taking smaller portions, giving their share to grandchildren, slowly starving themselves so others could have more. This was seen as noble, self-sacrificing. The good grandfather who thought of others. But really, it was just the brutality of resource scarcity forcing old people to choose between living and letting their families live. They chose their families, and died quietly, and everyone pretended it was natural causes. It wasn't. It was voluntary starvation dressed up as nobility. But acknowledging that was too painful. So no one did. Old men also told stories in winter. Not just for entertainment, for education. They'd lived through more winters than anyone. They knew which strategies worked, which mistakes killed people. Their stories were survival, manuals disguised as reminiscences. Remember the winter of 72 when Thomas tried to burn green wood and filled his house with smoke and nearly suffocated? Don't burn green wood. Remember when Margaret's family ran out of grain in February and tried to eat tree bark and got sick? Save some grain for March, no matter how hungry you are in January. These weren't just stories. They were lessons. Life and death lessons. Young people listened because old people who survived many winters clearly knew something about survival. The knowledge passed down through oral tradition because writing wasn't an option. Each generation learned from the previous generation's mistakes, which meant each generation's mistakes were first-time mistakes. education through near-death experience. Not ideal, but it worked. Sort of enough people survived to pass knowledge to the next generation. That was the standard. Teenagers in winter occupied a strange position, old enough to work like adults, young enough that their growing bodies needed more food than adults, but they got adult rations, or less. The calculation was brutal. If resources are scarce, prioritize adults who can work at full capacity over teenagers who eat more but work less efficiently. So teenagers were constantly starving, more than anyone else proportionally. A 15-year-old boy needed maybe 3,000 calories a day. He was getting 800. His body was eating itself. Growth stunted, development delayed. By the time he reached adulthood, if he reached adulthood, he was shorter and weaker than he would have been with adequate nutrition. Medieval peasants were notably small, not genetics. Malnutrition, especially winter malnutrition during crucial growth years. You can see it in the skeletons. Growth arrest, lines in the bones. Markers of severe childhood malnutrition. Every winter left physical scars in the bones themselves. Teenage girls had it worse. They needed calories for growth, plus they often had begun menstruating, which increased nutritional needs. But they were deprioritized even more than boys. The logic was coldly practical. Boys would do heavy labor. Girls would marry into other families, so invest resources in boys, minimize investment in girls. This wasn't universal, but it was common enough. Girls got smaller portions. Girls got less access to the fire. Girls' comfort was lowest priority. Some families didn't think this way. Some families treated all children equally. But resource scarcity pushed many families toward brutal calculus, and teenage girls paid the price. Higher mortality rates, stunted growth, lifelong health problems from malnutrition during crucial developmental years. Let's talk about teeth, because winter destroyed teeth faster than any other season. The diet was terrible for dental health. Coarse grain wore down enamel. Lack of fresh vegetables meant vitamin C deficiency, which caused gum disease. The cold meant people couldn't maintain even basic oral hygiene. No one was brushing teeth with snow, so teeth rotted. By age 25, you'd lost several teeth. By 35, you might have lost half. By 45, you were lucky to have any. Tooth loss wasn't just cosmetic, it made eating difficult. You couldn't chew tough preserved meat. You couldn't eat hard bread unless you soaked it first. You were limited to soft foods, which in winter meant porridge. Always porridge. Your dietary variety decreased as your teeth fell out. Less nutrition, weaker health, faster decline. Tooth loss was a major driver of the malnutrition, disease, death, spiral that killed so many medieval peasants. Dental pain in winter was its own special hell. You are cold, hungry, exhausted, and you have a raging toothache. There is no dentist, no painkillers, no treatment. The tooth just hurts. Constantly. Throbbing pain that prevents sleep, prevents eating, even though you are starving, prevents concentration. Some people tried to extract their own teeth, using pliers, or having a friend pull it. No anesthesia. Just pain. Excruciating pain. Some extractions worked. The tooth came out. The pain eventually stopped. Some extractions failed. The tooth broke. Part remained in the jaw. Got infected. You developed an abscess, which could spread to your bloodstream, which could kill you. Death from a toothache. Sounds ridiculous. Happened regularly. Medieval people lived in constant fear of dental problems, because dental problems could literally kill you. The smell of winter villages was distinctive. A combination of smoke, unwashed bodies, animal waste, rotting food, and sickness. Everyone's nose adapted after a few weeks. You stopped consciously noticing the smell, but it was there. Thick, oppressive, unhealthy. The smoke smell was constant. Every house burning wood constantly meant the entire village was wrapped in a haze of wood smoke. On calm days, the smoke hung low. Visibility was poor. Breathing was difficult. You coughed constantly. Everyone coughed, all winter. Chronic bronchitis was universal. The body smell was intense. No one bathed in winter, too cold. No facilities. Water was too precious to waste on bathing. You wore the same clothes for months without washing. Your body odor mixed with your clothes' odor created a powerful funk. Again, everyone smelled, so it became normalized. But if a modern person could visit a medieval winter village, the smell would be overwhelming. probably intolerable. The animal waste smell came from living in close quarters with livestock. Your goat lived in your house. Your chickens lived in your house. They defecated in your house. You cleaned up after them. Sort of, but not thoroughly. Too cold to take waste outside multiple times a day. So it accumulated. You lived in what was essentially a barn. The ammonia smell from urine was particularly bad. It irritated eyes and lungs, made the chronic coughing worse. But animals provided warmth and milk and occasional eggs. So you tolerated the smell and the waste. Another trade-off. Comfort versus survival. Survival won. Always. The sick smell was the worst. When people developed infected wounds or respiratory infections or dysentery, their bodies produced foul odors. Rotting flesh, infected breath, fecal matter from dysentery. These smells meant death was coming. You knew when someone in your house was dying partially by the smell. It changed, became sweeter, more rotten. The smell of death is distinctive. Medieval people recognized it immediately. When someone started smelling like death, you prepared for burial. Sometimes people recovered, but usually the smell meant the end was near. Let's talk about the concept of time in winter, because time became strange when you spent most of your life in darkness. Without clocks, without regular schedules, without the sun visible for most of the day, time became fluid. Amorphous, days blended together. You woke up in darkness. You went to sleep in darkness. The brief period of grey daylight was the only marker, but even that was unreliable. Cloud cover made some days darker than others. Time became measured not in hours but in tasks. Time to add wood to the fire. Time to eat the small meal. Time to sleep again. This happened 4 or 5 or 6 times, per Dalton yay. But you weren't counting. You just existed in a perpetual now, without clear past or future, just the immediate needs of the present moment. This temporal disorientation was psychologically destabilizing. Humans need rhythm, structure, the sense of progression through time. Medieval peasants in winter had none of that. January felt like December. February felt like January. The days were indistinguishable. This created a sense of being trapped in time, like winter would never end. Logically, you knew spring would come. You'd lived through winters before. But emotionally, trapped in the dark and cold and hunger, it felt permanent. Eternal. This is your life now, forever. That feeling of permanence made the suffering worse. If you knew it would end next week, you could endure almost anything. But not knowing when it would end, only that it might end eventually, that was psychological torture. Some people marked time deliberately, scratching marks on walls, 1 mark per Dalton Y, giving themselves a visual representation of time passing. This helped, not much. But some, you could see the marks accumulating, you could count them, you could calculate roughly how many days until spring. This gave a sense of control, of progression, of movement toward an end. The people who marked time had better mental health outcomes. Not because the marks changed anything, but because the act of marking gave purpose, structure, a ritual that imposed order on chaos. Others marked time by religious festivals. Christmas, Epiphany, Candlemas in February, Ash Wednesday. These festivals broke winter into chunks. It is 3 weeks until Christmas. It is 2 weeks past Epiphany. The religious calendar became a temporal map. The church knew this. The festivals were deliberately spaced to give people waypoints through the winter, something to look forward to, something to mark progress. The festivals themselves were modest, a slightly better meal, a special church service, but psychologically they were crucial. They proved time was still moving. Winter wouldn't last forever. Each festival brought you closer to spring. Now let's talk about laughter in winter, because laughter existed, not much, not often, but it happened, and when it happened, it was precious. Someone would make a joke, usually dark humor, gallows humor about the situation. The kind of joke that is only funny because if you don't laugh, you'll cry. And everyone would laugh. Brief, sharp laughter that released tension. For a few seconds, the horror receded. You remembered you were human, that life contained more than suffering, that connection and joy existed. Then the moment passed, back to cold and hunger and darkness, but the memory lingered. The knowledge that laughter was still possible, that sustained people. The human capacity to find humor in dire circumstances is remarkable. Medieval peasants demonstrated it constantly. Children played even in winter. When it wasn't too cold, they went outside and played in the snow, made snowballs, built snow structures, slid down hills on pieces of wood. They laughed and ran and forgot, briefly, that they were starving and freezing. Parents watched and felt complicated emotions. Relief that childhood joy still existed, grief that it was so rare, fear that this might be the last winter for some of these children. But mostly they just let them play, because childhood in medieval times was already brutal. Let them have their moments. Adults played too, occasionally. Someone would start singing. Others would join in. Simple songs, work songs, drinking songs, songs everyone knew. The singing wasn't beautiful, but it was communal. It created connection. It filled the silence. It reminded people they were part of something larger than their individual suffering. Music was one of the few things that couldn't be taken away. You didn't need instruments, didn't need anything but your voice. Even starving, freezing people could sing, and they did. Not often, not for long, but sometimes, and those times mattered. So when you think about medieval life, don't think about castles and knights. Think about winter. Think about the desperate struggle to survive 5 months of cold, hunger, and darkness. Think about the calculations. Who gets food? Who gets firewood? Who lives? Who dies? Think about children starving. Old people freezing. Whole families wiped out by bad luck and bad weather. Think about the survivors. Broken, traumatized. Guilty, haunted, but alive. For now. Until next winter, when it happens all over again. Think about the old man voluntarily starving himself so his grandchildren can eat more. Think about the mother waking every 2 hours for 5 months to tend the fire. Think about the teenage boy stealing grain to save his family. Think about the 14-year-old bride in a stranger's house facing her first winter away from home. Think about the village elder making decisions about who gets help knowing that his choices determine who lives and who dies. Think about all of them trapped in a system they didn't create, trying desperately to survive conditions that were barely survivable. Not heroes, not villains. Just people, ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances, doing what humans do. Enduring, adapting, surviving, or not surviving, but trying. This is the truth of medieval winter. Brutal, tragic, inescapable. And now you know. Now you understand. Now you'll never complain about your own winter the same way. Because your winter, however cold, however dark, is nothing compared to theirs. You have heat at the touch of a button. Food at the nearest store, medicine if you get sick. They had none of that. They had firewood and grain and hope. And sometimes, often, that wasn't enough. But they survived anyway, as many as could, for as long as they could. And that, in the end, is the story of medieval winter. Not triumph, not victory, just survival. Desperate, tenuous, traumatic survival. The kind that leaves scars that never heal. The kind that defines a life. The kind that, somehow impossibly, humans endured for centuries. Until finally, gradually the world changed enough that winter stopped being a death sentence. But that took hundreds of years. For medieval peasants, winter was death, and they faced it every year, and some of them survived, and that has to be enough, because that is all there is.